What's good, Roughnecks fans, and welcome back to the Rough 'em Up Podcast. I'm your co-host, Cullen Watkins, and who's that with me? We got A-Train Arlington Lane with us. How are you doing on this fine Tuesday, Arlington?
One word. Undefeated. That's how I feel right now, baby. Undefeated.
Woo!
Yes,
3-0. 3-0 after the 22-13 win against the San Antonio Brahmas. We can dissect a lot in the game, but, we got the win overall. It wasn't the most pretty win that we've ever had by any means, but it was a solid game. Of course, it was here at TDECU Stadium. Both of us were here. For the fans who don't know, me and Arlington were both at the game. The crowd was pretty good. They came in around the first quarter, you said, Arlington, about.
Mm-hmm.
And where do we even start? We can talk about the first half of this game and comparing it to the second half of this game. The differences for the Roughnecks.
I say this.
Different teams.
First half was a great team, and then the second half was like, where did they go?
Mm-hmm.
Where did the great team go? And but that first half was fantastic. You had Jonte Kirkland, 2 touchdown catches in that second quarter. In the first and second quarter. So that was good to see. And then of course I think Deontay Burnett was on the other end of an 18-yard touchdown pass. So, I was impressed with how Brandon Silvers was getting the ball moved around. I think he had like over 8 different receivers for the game. So, that caught a pass. And the play of Max Borghi in that first half was pretty fantastic himself too.
Mm-hmm. And we saw more Bryson Allen too, both in the running game and the passing game. I really like him. He's small, but he's shifty. He is so shifty. I really like how we utilized him. And I feel like, especially in the second half, when we really needed to pick up those yards and those first downs to keep, the possession in our hands.
Yeah.
Running to Allen, he was pretty clutch in the second half. But I want to talk about Brandon Silvers a bit more, because I feel like as the weeks are going on, people are starting to notice what he's doing a bit more. He's second in the XFL right now in passing yards, and he's tied for first in passing touchdowns. And people, I just want to say it, I sort of knew this was going to happen. You go back to some of my earliest videos on this channel, I've been hyping up Brandon Silvers for so long because I knew he was capable of this. And last week on the podcast, Arlington, you were talking about at the press conference comparing his Seattle stint in the XFL in 2020 to the Houston stint in 2023. What differences are you seeing between the 2020 Brandon Silvers and the 2023 Brandon Silvers? What is he doing differently?
I think he's getting a good help from his coaching staff, with AJ Smith, an offensive coordinator, and a bit more talented players that is on his squad, man. And they have guys that can make plays, that can make something out of nothing. And he looks poised. He doesn't seem rattled at all. And I think that is the major thing, is when you have an offensive coordinator like AJ Smith that can work with you and wants you to remain focused. And that's what he's done. And he's done well at the quarterback position, especially in this past game. Probably was his best game with 3 touchdowns and a pick.
Yeah, 278 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 24 completions and 35 attempts. That's a solid stat line. And on the defense, when I think about this game defensively, the one drive that stands out for me as a Roughnecks fan was that 1 yard line. The Brahmas were at the 1 yard line, and we stopped them. And because if they scored, they were in that game big time if they scored, because our offense wasn't doing anything in that second half. So the Brahmas, they look really good if they were going to score that ball. Arlington, we talked about it before this podcast. What did Hines Ward have to say about that drive? Because I know you were at the press conference after the game. What did he say about that drive?
Basically said that was on me, and that I asked him, would it be best to go for the field goal on 4th down and then, potentially do the 4th and 15 or onside kick or whatever. He was like, no, I couldn't do it. It's like at that moment, I'm thinking about the game flow and I'm thinking about punching it in and then going for 3 afterwards. And because if you think about it, he scores. If the Brahmas score there, they're down 3. You go for 3, you tie the game. You also shift the momentum because
Big
at
time.
that moment, the Roughnecks were not doing anything good on off, weren't getting anything offensively. So at this point, you shifted and you shift their mindsets to the point where now they're playing on their heels more than they are, going after it. And so if they scored there, that again, like I said, it shifts the momentum. It would have been a very different ball game if that 9-point swing would have turned and they would have tied the game. Mm-hmm. So at that rate, phenomenal job by that front 7 to keep them out of the end zone, and did it 4 times. You had to do that 4 times. So that's a phenomenal job, but it goes to show you that Wade Phillips, experienced coach, knows what he expects of his player, and they went out for him and made sure that they stayed where they were. And again, phenomenal job by that defense.
Mm-hmm. And just talking about the defense, we only gave up in total was 162 offensive yards to the Brahmas, under 100 passing yards we gave up. You're going to win football games when you do that. We've stopped in my opinion, a very solid running team in San Antonio. They have, I believe, 2 of some of the most talented running backs in the whole league. It's good defense. It's really good defense. And, going into this week's game against Orlando, I'm sorry to say it for Orlando fans, but I just don't think there's much of a chance. I don't think there is. What are your thoughts on this upcoming game? Of course, we're on the road for the first time. We're away for the first time, but will that even matter?
I think if they stick to the game plan like they've been doing all season long, I think it's going to be a massacre. I mean, you got to remember the 30s, who was it 30 or 33-12?
Yes.
First game, 30-12. Yeah. And so scored about 30 points in that game. It can happen even in front of an Orlando crowd because they were prepared. And granted, it was just the first game, so you didn't know what to expect. But now that we're in the 4th week, you kind of get an understanding of what these teams are about. And for the Roughnecks, it's all about balance, both offensively and defensively. And so at this rate during the season, the offensive line should be better than what they were. And it's going to be interesting to see how those front 7 is able to get to the quarterback, especially in Paxton Lynch. And of course, that the signing of Quentin Flowers. A lot of people were dismissing that, saying it's not going to matter who you put at quarterback for the Guardians. It still should be the same result come this weekend. Another dub for the Houston Roughnecks.
Mm-hmm. And I'd have to agree with that. I'm even thinking in 2020, we played against the Tampa Bay Vipers, who played Flowers a little bit. And like you said, I just don't think it's going to matter. It's not going to matter, whether you have, I don't know what the whole Dormady drama, what that's going to come of it. Even if he plays, it's not going to matter. Now, sure, there's always room for an upset, but I think what we're seeing with this Houston team, they just look so good. Like, I think we're sort of struggling to find stuff to talk about them because they're just good. That's the thing. Right. They're just good. If we were talking about Vegas, you could say, oh, they need a better running game, better this on defense. Houston's covering all aspects of a football game. You got the defense, You got the offense in both the passing game and the running game. I'm going to be real honest. The running game is a lot better than I thought it was going to be going into the season. A lot better.
I think what we were looking forward to seeing is what the play of Brandon Silvers was going to be like, and how AJ Smith was going to be able to work with him. And like, he's finding targets. You know, he has playmakers, and that's the big key here. That's what you need in a team, a balanced offense and defense like this. This is definitely an XFL championship bound team.
Yeah.
And I know we're saying that early here and we getting into week 4, but if you look at the rest of the season, for the Roughnecks, there's a potential. I know we say undefeated, but if we be realistic about it, there's a chance where they'll just have 2 losses and they'll still be at the top of the South Division, where they could potentially get a championship berth on May 13th. Like, this team is that good enough where we're talking XFL title game in San Antonio on May 13th.
And just because we swept the South. You know, we've beaten everyone in the South, and we're capable of doing it again. But, you know, I think I am worried. I'm circling on the calendar, you know, against teams like the Battlehawks and especially the DC Defenders.
And don't get me wrong,
them.
Don't get me wrong. Do not throw out the Seattle Sea Dragons.
True. That's right. That's next. That's week 5.
Do not
and
throw
we'll
them
be
out.
in Seattle too.
And they have not played in cold weather yet. So you got to keep that in mind. They're going to be in some warmer weather this week against Orlando, but they haven't played in a different climate this season. And that could be altering for teams that played it, you know, in that type of weather. So, I mean, Seattle's offense is pretty potent. You know, they have a good running back right now in Ellison. And of course, DiNucci has been throwing the ball out of his mind. Got 7 touchdowns on the season, tied with Brandon Silvers. So just because they got the 2 defeats doesn't mean that they could get defeated and again come week 5, because Seattle's on a high right now. They got the big win against Vegas. And so you have to look at some of these teams that Houston is going up against and thinking, look, at some point, they're going to have to take an L to somebody. I'd rather it be on the road than it be at home. So, like you also mentioned about the Battlehawks come April 1st. I think that's week 6. That's a matchup.
Yeah.
Because AJ McCarron's coming to town. And so you have to look at that matchup too. Like, don't overlook it. But of course we can't overlook the Guardians, but they have had success already early this season against them. So that's what's going to be the key here. Like, right after the Guardians, like, and heaven forbid no key injuries happen. Like, everybody seems to be healthy at this point for Houston. That's why everything's so complete.
Yes, they have been very healthy. That's one thing I've sort of been surprised with. Checking the weekly injury reports, there's like barely anyone on there, knock on wood. But I totally agree with you. And I forgot about that Sea Dragons matchup. And especially, you know, if they beat San Antonio this week, which is very possible. Josh Gordon's hot. Ja'Cour Pearson, he's hot. DiNucci, he's hot. It's a hot-looking team right now.
Absolutely.
That Houston Sea Dragons game, it's going to be a good one. And I'm just sort of having flashbacks to week 5 of the 2020 season, where we almost lost against the Seattle Dragons with BJ Daniels at quarterback. So I, you know, and as a Houston fan, I'm not a big Seattle guy. You have the Mariners, you know, but and the weather too. Like, the coldest game we have was that week 1 game against Orlando. But even then, Houston cold is nowhere near Seattle cold. Because Seattle, nowhere near. It's not even in the same tier. I was thinking about this. I want to ask you about it.
Okay.
Cole McDonald. I sort of feel bad for him because I know he's talented, But he's not going to get a shot if Brandon Silvers keeps playing like this. And I know that I read an article, I forget who it was by, maybe XFL Board, about potentially trading Cole McDonald to a team like Orlando who needs a quarterback. What are your thoughts on that?
I think right now Cole McDonald needs to kind of just need to wait it out, because let's say they trade him, right? And Brandon Silvers goes down and get injured. And you don't have your backup quarterback anymore because you decide to trade him off. I think you have to look at it as insurance policy. That's what Cole McDonald is right now. He has to be ready to go just in case Brandon Silvers goes down. And I mean, and knock on wood, Brandon Silvers continues to have a great season. But you got to make sure that if something happens to Brandon, Cole is ready to go. And if you give that up, you might not get the same success that you were looking for, and then you be down 2 quarterbacks. And then, I mean, don't get me wrong, Caleb Ellaby, we haven't got a chance to see him at all because he's been active in each game. Would you be ready for him to step up and play? Whether as Cole McDonald's already been playing in the games, got a chance to throw a little bit, got a chance to run the ball. He's got game action.
Mm-hmm.
Caleb Ellaby has not had any game action yet. And if you trade him, that could hurt a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. And too, as much as I love Caleb Ellaby, like you said, he hasn't even been getting dressed for the games. I see him walking out of the tunnel and he's not even dressed. I've said it, I believe it was like my quarterback introduction video. I talked about Caleb Ellaby. I imagine him as a guy who, like, hopefully XFL season 2 next season. Hopefully we see more of him during season 2, hopefully with the Roughnecks, since he's just so young. But I agree with you on that. It was just something I heard, and I didn't really, that didn't really cross my mind. And 2, I don't even know who we'd trade. Like, what do we need? Sure, you can get more depth on a position, but is it really worth trading a good backup just adds a little more depth, even if it's on the defense or whatever? But I think we can both agree, though, that, going back to this Orlando game, I feel a lot more comfortable going into this game than I did going into the San Antonio game. And to Orlando, they've been switching up so many things on their O-line too, changing, adding guys. I think they made a few trades this week, changing positions. I just think the Wade Phillips defense is just going to attack that. They're going to take advantage of an Orlando team that, I'm going to be completely honest, they don't know what they're doing right now, I feel. Terrell Buckley, he's trying, but it's going to be ugly, I feel.
Really vulnerable. And
yes,
you have to attack that. You got to attack. I would not be surprised if they blitz on every play.
Because it's going to work.
It's right. It's going to be a great chance it's going to work.
Yeah.
So you got to attack it and attack it early. You got to rattle. You got to frustrate. You have to agitate when it comes to this Orlando team right now. They're not hot. They're not hot at all. They don't have any momentum going anywhere. And they had a little bit, I'll say this. They had a little bit going into that Arlington game where they were up 9-3 and they wind up losing in the end 10-9. And it looks like that they was going to get somewhere, but same result, just a close game this time. They still got a loss on their record. So even though they're sitting at 0-3, it looks like they're going to be looking at 0-4 coming after this week too.
Yeah, it's not going to be an easy matchup by any means. But before we close it out here, this has just been something I've been thinking about, and it's bound to happen. This conversation's bound to happen, Where would you compare this 2023 Houston team with the 2020 team? Who do you think's better? Because I've been thinking about it. I don't know the answer.
PJ and Cam were great, but there were a lot of close games in that 2020 season. a lot of it. Whereas with this 2023 season, the only close game has been the San Antonio game.
Mm-hmm.
And that was 9 points. That's still a difficult amount, even though it's doable to happen in the XFL. But they have been lights out on defense. The team is first in points allowed, right? And they are first in sacks. I think they're number 2 in interceptions, if I'm not mistaken. That's a top defense. And so you could say, well, they haven't played any of the North opponents yet. You know, they've been playing mostly the South. I think the only matchup that they had, they played all South opponents.
Yep, all South.
And so, you know, they haven't got a chance to play the North. That will be the key, though. When they get to playing them, when they start playing those guys, come week 5, and it's on the road, that'll be a good test because these are the teams that you may have to potentially go up against in the championship game.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have to be prepared for that. Hey, right now, they're 3-0 against the South, and it could be potentially 4-0 come this week. You start getting tested because it's not going to be about the division foes anymore. Because honestly, I think the South is theirs.
Mm-hmm.
The Houston Roughnecks right now, as we sitting going into week 4, this is their division to win.
Yeah.
And they'll have the top seed. They keep playing well. Because I don't think the other 3 teams can catch them. Mm-hmm. You know, it's going to be difficult because of the balance. That's what's going to be the key here. You got a good balance. Make sure they maintain that balance and they remain healthy. And again, that also means that they remain healthy. If they remain healthy, they'll be good. Mm-hmm. They'll be good to go come May 13th.
Yeah, there's no doubt that, you know, all respect to our Southern Division rivals, but the South is definitely a lot weaker of a division right now than the North is. I mean, in the North, DC, St. Louis, and Seattle.
Yeah, and don't let that 1-2 record fool you.
Yeah, and even, it's sort of weird with me saying this, but even Vegas, they're not a bad team. They're not an Orlando level team, you know. Vegas, they've shown some flashes of good stuff, especially with Hundley, and they just need to get some stuff figured out, and they're going to start winning games. But you're right about it, though. You're on the road. You're going to be playing North Division teams. You're going to be seeing one of these teams if you want to make it to the XFL championship. It's going to be crucial. And like I said earlier in the podcast, that DC game, that's my main circled one right now. I think that's going to be a great game because right now, from what I'm seeing, I'm sure you can agree with me and anyone can agree with me, DC and Houston right now look like your top teams when it comes to talent and record, of course, too. And with the South Division, too, who do you think's going to take, considering Houston gets the number 1 spot, who do you think's going to take that number 2 spot? Because I'm sort of thinking San Antonio over Arlington. I think San Antonio is capable of getting that number 2 spot. But what do you think?
It's going to go between those two, and because it's already a given with how Orlando is looking. Orlando is outside looking in. So I believe the Brahmas are going to overtake the Renegades for that 2nd spot. And granted, there is Kyle Slaughter, and he's, you know, getting connected more with his team, especially with the one team now. Now he's quarterback 1. I mean, that is even more crazy how that has even come about because Drew Plitt wasn't bad.
No, he wasn't.
I guess they just wasn't. I didn't like the progression he got, you know, from the last couple of games. But I'm like, Kyle Slaughter didn't give a lot to make it seem like that he should be quarterback 1. But with that situation, you know, that could be damaging to, you know, to your franchise, you know, and with the Brahmas, they're going to stick with Jack Cohn, man. I don't think Reed Sinnett is going to get an opportunity to play unless they completely knock Jack Cohn out of the game.
Yeah.
That's the only way Reed Sinnett is going to see the field. They're utilizing their rushing attack quite well because remember, in the game, it almost gave up. The Roughnecks almost gave up 100 yards to them. So anytime you get that, you get close like that, you know, that's a significant plus for your for your offense. If you can get a good defense like that and you can almost get 100 yards rushing, you did a pretty good job. Now, on the passing attack, that's what's going to be the key for San Antonio at this point, is making sure that you can utilize Alize Mack. You got these guys that are receiving core, and they're a bit faster than some of the others. You got to utilize it. But in that game against the Roughnecks, San Antonio couldn't do anything.
Literally. Yeah, it was. I was expecting at least a little bit more on the passing attack, but hey, again, for those who didn't get the gist, it was an ugly game. It was an ugly win. I'd consider it. If you want to beat a team like DC, you're going to have to score in the second half.
Yep,
you're going to have to. There's no option not to. Even I don't care how good your defense is, you got to score in the second. But we're capable of it. We're capable of scoring every quarter. That's the thing, and that's sort of the positive that we can take away from all of this. And this is just a positive situation in general. But, of course, our next game is on this Saturday, March 11th, as we take on the Orlando Guardians in Orlando. So make sure y'all watch that, and make sure y'all watch the Rough 'Em Up podcast every week. I believe this was our 4th episode. I'm having a blast with it so far. It's just so fun to cover my favorite team with a guy as awesome as A-Train himself. So I hope y'all have been enjoying this. I hope y'all enjoyed this episode. This is a positive episode. It wasn't a lot of negative to talk about. But I think going into week 5, we're going to have a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. So make sure y'all subscribe and like this video. You're not going to want to miss this because we have a championship team on our hands, folks. We do. This team don't mess around. So, Arlington, do you have anything else to say before we close it out?
Houston to get a 30 more. They'll get 30 points against Orlando again. So that's what I'm looking forward to seeing. And
fireworks.
More. Get that offense and make it balanced. I know everything was happening kind of quickly in that first half for the Roughnecks, but this go around they might spread it around just a bit more. You know what I mean? I don't know. Something has to change a bit on that, those second half woes, because it wasn't like the Brahmas was actually stopping them. It was just that there was some plays that was being made that shouldn't have been made.
Yeah.
And here we are going into week 4, and they're going against a weak Orlando Guardians team, that's in a disarray right now. So you got to attack that so that way you can keep that undefeated streak alive.
Mm-hmm. That's all I got. And it's looking good. Trying to go 4-0 this week. We're 2 wins away from matching that iconic 5-0 record of the 2020 Roughnecks. So, folks, again, thank you so much for watching. My name's Colin Watkins, and I'm here with Arlington Lane, a.k.a. A-Train himself, and we'll see y'all next time. And remember, rough 'em up, baby. We'll see you next time.
Go Roughnecks.